Alright fam, I did it. After weeks of searching, and I had to do some things that I don't want to mention, I finally got one. I finally got Super Famicom Classic Edition. Now, you are getting into some biased territory here. I did grow up with Sega. I did have a Sega Genesis during the 16-bit wars, so I am biased. But this thing is actually pretty sweet. So let's take a look at the Super Famicom Classic Edition. Now here it is, the Super Famicom Mini Edition next to the controller, which is as big as the system. Here's the controller, which feels great, by the way. It feels exactly like the old school Super Famicom controller design and all. And here's the Super Famicom Mini. Nice little system. It fits right into the palm of your hand. Great for travel. There's the power and HDMI outputs, which you kind of need to use the thing. Or power button, reset button, which you both need to turn the thing on and select different games. Take out this little doodad. You can connect controllers to it, and there are two included in the package. Here's the Famicom Mini that I reviewed last year. Like the thing, but the controllers are just way too tiny. Thankfully, that isn't the problem with the Super Famicom Mini, which allows access to different kinds of controllers. And as you can see, there's a lot of similarities between the two systems with how their power buttons work, how their reset buttons are, and the giant eject buttons that unfortunately don't work anymore. They should. I miss those things. Those things were awesome. And here it is next to the Big Papa Super Famicom, which I reviewed earlier this year. And ta-da, you can stand it up inside the original Famicom. There are the controllers. Which one's the original Super Famicom controller and which one's the new one? You can't tell because they both look exactly the same. But one of them only works on that thing. But anyway, the Super Famicom Mini, it is a cute little system, and a lot of the problems that the Famicom Mini had are still here, so you will need a way to keep the system close to you in order to reset the games and turn on the system. But other than that, this is a great little system, but what good is a system without its games? And thankfully, that's where the Super Famicom Mini really shines at. The game selection is really solid. There are a total of 21 games on the Super Famicom Mini, and they went for almost all the heavy hitters. Super Mario World, Super Mario Kart, F-Zero, Star Fox, Secret of Mana, Link to the Past, Super Metroid, and more are all here on one system. There are a few notable missing games on here. There's a serious lack of Chrono Trigger and Zombies Ate My Neighbors, and I would have loved to have seen Sunset Riders, ActRaiser, and Gradius 3 on here. Come on, Nintendo, what the hell is wrong with you? Most of my time on the system has been spent playing Super Metroid and Contra 3. Those games kick ass. Still, despite the great games that the Super Famicom and the Super Nintendo have, I've never really been a big fan of the sound chip in the system. It sounds so muffled, like there's a band next door and they're trying to listen to them through the wall. Seriously, which would you listen to? This? Or this? Okay, let's never do that again. The Super Famicom Mini, much like the Famicom Mini before it, offers unique games specific to the Japanese version. And this time there are 5 games unique to the Japanese version. There's no Super Punch-Out, no Super Castlevania 4, no Kirby's Dream Course, no Street Fighter 2 Turbo, or Earthbound on this thing. Are the replacements worth the investment into a new console? Let's take a look. First up is The Legend of the Mystical Ninja, aka Ganbare Goemon. This is a very Japanese game, but it's also a very lighthearted affair from the good old days when Konami didn't hate the game industry, themselves, and us. And despite being an early title on the system, it looks and sounds great. The colors just burst off the screen, and the gameplay is simple, addictive fun. Go around beating the shit out of greasers, demons, and greaser demons. And if you have a friend, there is 2-player co-op. Easily one of the shining games on the Super Famicom Mini. Next up is Super Soccer. This one is kind of a letdown. It isn't a horrible game by any stretch of the imagination, but it's fucking soccer. At least they went with a more arcade-style soccer game rather than a simulation. But if you aren't a fan of soccer, This is a waste of a spot. The hits keep rolling with Fire Emblem Mystery of the Emblem. This one has Martha in it, so Smash players rejoice. Ain't gonna front. Never was into the Fire Emblem series other than the waifus. And Fire Emblem Warriors, that game is tits. I'm sure Fire Emblem Mystery of the Emblem is a great game, but it ain't for me. Instead of Street Fighter 2 Turbo, we got Super Street Fighter 2, the new challengers for the Super Famicom Mini. Capcom loves making sequels for a sequel, and this title adds in 4 new characters to the roster, most notably fan favorite, but let's be real, she's the worst girl, Cammy. I'm not sure about this version of Street Fighter 2. It's kind of slow and it's not as, I don't know, well built as Turbo or Super Turbo. I rarely hear any Street Fighter 2 fans talk about this iteration in the Street Fighter 2 series, and there might be a reason for that. It's functional, and I'm sure casual fighting games fans will love having more characters in the roster compared to Street Fighter 2 Turbo, but I don't know about this one. Okay, let's end on a high note. The last game unique to the Super Famicom is Panel de Dawn, a puzzle game, and a fun one at that. Blocks come up, and the goal is to line 3 of the same color to keep the blocks from reaching to the top. There's no diagonal matches, but this is great fun. I believe this is the basis for which Pokemon Puzzle League was made on, so if you played that game, why not try the original game? It's very fun, very addicting, and great with 2 players, and in my opinion one of the strongest games on the Super Famicom Mini. And now arguably the biggest draw of the Super Famicom Classic and the Super Famicom Mini is Star Fox 2, a game that was ready for the store shelves but got shelved in favor of promoting the Nintendo 64. I'm a dork for beta and cancelled games, and having a chance to play a cancelled game is a rare treat. And Star Fox 2, it's alright. I think Star Fox 2 was a bit too awesome for the Super Nintendo to handle, even with the Super Effects Assist. The open space levels are cool, but it's hard to stay focused on your targets. And the RTS elements are interesting, but I don't think they were fully fleshed out, and to me they serve mostly as a distraction to the shooting fun. I do like the walker stages, and I like how the title is non-linear with 6 characters to play with. And I feel like this would have been a great direction for the Star Fox series to take in, but unfortunately though they decided to schmize the whole thing and reboot the series for Star Fox 64, which unfortunately the whole series has been stuck in that game's shadow from. Just saying, Star Fox 64, pretty good, but I hate hearing anyone else say anything good about the other Star Fox games. If Star Fox 2 did come out for the Super Nintendo, it would have been straight fire. Now, it is fun, but its age does show a bit, most notably in the frame rate, which is kind of slow, but do not be mistaken, this is a very playable game. But I can't but feel this would have made a great game for the Sega 32X. You know it's true. Overall, the Super Famicom Mini is a really cool little device, and it does save you a lot of money if you want a lot of games for one price instead of having to spend the money on the physical game cartridges. The thing is though, about the Super Famicom Mini specifically, is that the games that are unique to it aren't really worth the price of admission to import this thing. I felt like the Super Famicom, or the Famicom Mini proper, had a bit more to it than the Super does in terms of unique games. The Super Famicom Mini is kind of lacking in that territory, and you also have to take into account that the RPGs are effectively unplayable unless you can read Japanese, so keep that in mind if you are looking to buy a Super Famicom Mini. But for the rest of us, I think if you own a Super Nintendo Classic, I think that's fine enough as it is. But anyway guys, thanks for watching. Remember to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, and just remember kids, Sega does when Nintendo don't. This thing doesn't have flash processing, the Genesis does. That's all I gotta say about that. Anyway, later fam.